A common challenge for us as neurodivergents is being tone deaf and not reading the room. I know as somebody who is autistic and has difficulty inferring what's appropriate in certain contexts, and also somebody who has ADHD and can be very impulsive and blurt things out, I can often get into trouble. An example of this was when I was in high school. Somebody mentioned to me in class that their father had died from cancer, no less. And naturally, being curious, I wanted to know, for some reason, how they had disposed of this gentleman's remains. Very macabre, really inappropriate to ask about. And I said to her, didn't really miss a beat. I said, did you bury him or was he cremated? Of course, I know now that that was not an appropriate response. It was very insensitive. It was also inappropriate to ask. I think the appropriate response would have been to have given some form of condolences. And I might have said something to the effect of that, like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But even so, following it with a close inquiry, following it closely with an inquiry of that nature, I know now is grossly insensitive. And it seems more like I'm seeking facts than actually connecting with the person or their story, what they had experienced. Now I have a veritable backlog of experiences of me having said or done similar things like that and had some kind of adverse reaction to know differently. But at the time I didn't know. And a friend slash bystander said Essie in response to my comment. And the other person whose father had passed away took it in their stride and they treated me with grace. They were like, no, it's okay. And then she answered and told me that he'd been cremated. Not my right to ask those kinds of questions. It probably was viewed as invasive, and I find often because of the impulsivity and the autism curiosity, I want to ask questions. I want to know details, sometimes when it isn't even my business. So I venture into territory that is very dangerous when I ask questions without really necessarily reading the room and being a little bit tone deaf in my delivery or in my timing. That's a common challenge is, why not now? My brain says to me that I want to know this answer right now. My brain is saying to me to ask this question now. And if I don't, I'm going to forget it because my inattentiveness or my ADHD executive dysfunction means it's going to go out of my attention and I'm going to go on to something else and forget it before I've even asked. So it's now or never a lot of the time, at least in my brain. And so I've since learned that I have to kind of slow down. And if I have a question of that nature, spend a bit more time expressing the condolences, doing the exploratory work, connecting with them, building rapport. And if I really, really need to know, then I'll ask. But that was a kind of question that I didn't need to ask. My inquisitive mind wants to know these kinds of details, especially when it comes to death, because especially when I was younger, I had a fascination with death and trying to understand it and wrap my head around it. So I would sometimes ask questions of that nature in an attempt to understand the phenomena and how it had actually affected people. Have you had an instance where you've been a little bit tone deaf and you didn't read the room and you shot from the hip and said something impulsively that wasn't received well, or that was experienced as harmful or hurtful by somebody else, and you had an adverse reaction? I would love to hear all about your experiences.